Imagine being bought like an ornament by alien nobles who think you're nothing more than a rare pet. But what happens when that pet starts connecting hearts, building alliances, and turning an entire galactic empire upside down, all through the simple human power to bond with everything? This isn't just survival, it's transformation. It's rebellion through compassion. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The air inside Aurealis Exchange Hall felt like cool glass. Light moved in slow waves above the crowd, carrying the soft sense of distant worlds. Lord Cavor of the Varel Assembly adjusted the slim bands on his long wrists, polished stones catching pale blue glimmers. He came to buy something that would speak of taste, wealth, and reach. He also came because lately, ordinary rarity felt dull. Toru, the ribbon-finned auctioneer, drifted beneath a column of soft gravity and bowed with theatrical grace. Next, Toru sang, a sentient from a young ocean world catalogued as human, Origin Soul 3. A cylindrical field brightened. Inside stood a human man in simple gray, Miles Hart. His hair was short, his eyes a steady green that held no rage and no fear, only careful presence. Cavor's 4 pupils focused. Steward Ryle leaned close, voice like a folded cloth. My lord, the rumors are true. The species is adaptable. Still, the price will climb. It should, Cavor said, letting a small smile rise. Rarity that makes whispers travel is never cheap. Bids started with a murmur, then rose in sharp little peaks. A domed aristocrat from Tal Oro lifted a carved token. A crystalline iris blinked refracted numbers. Cavor remained still until the hum of interest steadied. Then he lifted one elegant hand and doubled the current figure. The room shifted. A handful of rivals tried to hold their ground. Most slipped back into the comfort of being merely spectators. Sold, Toru announced, voice ringing like a silver bell. To Lord Cavor of the Varel Assembly. The field dissolved with a hush. 2 drones moved to either side of Miles. He stepped out with calm balance like one who has walked narrow decks in heavy sea weather. Brill clicked a note into the ledger. Extravagant, the steward said under his breath, though the tone held only duty, not blame. Pride is a currency, Cavor replied, amused. And this one carries a story. As they entered the processing corridor, Cavor watched the human's face, hoping for awe or fear or the spark of some quaint custom. Miles offered neither. He looked measured, tucked details away. The corridor lanterns left a soft sheen on the human skin. The scanners traced the outline of a small implant at the skull's base. A simple translator and compliance device, the handlers said. Nothing alarming, nothing dramatic. Just technology doing what power expects it to do. Understands basic commands, a clerk muttered, tapping a tablet. Speech comprehension improved by proximity loop. Full nuance, not likely, Cavor nodded. Have him sent to my sky estate. Prepare a habitat that will make the guests speak softly when they see it. As the seal pressed and ownership passed, Miles glanced left, only an instant. Cavor followed the look and saw a small figure half-shadowed near a service arch. A young Varel, scales faint as new leaves, eyes wide and clear. The child's hand held a slim learning tab that glowed with simple shapes. The child noticed they had been noticed and vanished with quick poise like a bird slipping into reeds. Riel lifted a brow. One of the household young, my lord. Let it be, Cavor said. Curiosity is a fine perfume at a gathering. The shuttle to the estate rose through pale traffic lanes. Outside, clouds wore belts of amber light, and the sky estate came into view. Terraces hung like petals around a central spine. Thread bridges shimmered between towers. Gardens floated in their own calm fields. It was a place built to tell strangers that borders meant nothing to its owner. Miles was shown to a habitat designed from broadcast gleanings, catalog images and guesswork, a room that looked half modern and half memory, a low couch beside a carved wooden chest, a kitchen corner of smooth metal and tall jars of dried herbs that no one on Earth actually used anymore, an art print mimicking a famous painting, but missing the human touch that made it timeless. It was impressive, careful, and in the smallest ways, wrong. One wall looked out into a circular gallery, its glass so pure it seemed the air itself had thickened. Visitors could stand there and see the human in his new home, safe behind the neat geometry of fields and sensors. Miles paced the limits, not testing, only learning. Here was where the field hummed slightly. There was where it warmed. The nutrient doors opened on an even cycle. The drones floated in a path so precise he could almost hear the beat behind it. "You will be well kept," Real told him plainly, speaking slow galactic standard. "In return, you will keep the rules." Miles offered a small nod, green eyes steady, silence as a kind of answer. When the steward left, the room exhaled. Miles sat on the edge of the sleeping platform and let himself remember a shore road at dusk, a coffee cup left on a workshop table, the sound of rain ticking on sheet metal. The implant pulsed, a tiny throb, as if reminding him that his thoughts now lived under a ceiling. He breathed through it. He looked out into the gallery. Across the circle, a being with a coat like oil on water raised a narrow limb and traced a slow arc. An introduction, perhaps. Next to that habitat, a gentle flood of translucent blues gathered into a round resting shape, and a ripple of light moved through it, calm as a lullaby. Another chamber held a tall figure made of pale strings that hummed. The sound was not music, yet it felt like song. At the far curve, a low shell-backed creature turned with great care, as if the world could crack if rushed. Miles lifted his hand in a simple wave. A soft pulse of color answered. He felt something resolve inside him, not surrender, not defiance. Choice. To notice, to connect, to make meaning in small pieces until small pieces became a bridge. The hall quieted. Night settled in a wash of indigo. And in that quiet, a path began. Dawn on the estate came in ribbons of warm gold. The day of the exhibition carried a brightness that made every surface look new. Servants glided across open terraces. Drones traced careful loops. Guests arrived on floating barges that hummed like low bees. Their voices braided through the air with gentle music from a trio of throat flutes and soft drums. Miles' habitat had been shifted to a show ring that opened toward the reception hall. The glass between them was clean as breath on winter air. Lanterns put a buttery sheen on everything. An attendant adjusted a plaque that carried a tidy summary, all nouns and numbers. Human soul 3, manual skill potential, high. Language arc, rising. Temperament, calm under guidance. A smaller line in faint script read, "Please do not tap on the barrier." Several guests tapped anyway. Lord Cavour arrived in a robe of layered silk metal that caught light like fish scales in shallow water. He praised the arrangements and accepted praise with the ease of someone who had been praised all his life. "Our human is the story tonight," he said with a graceful tilt of the head. "Let him show gentle wit, not too brilliant. Our friends enjoy relief, not a challenge." Real passed a clipped nod to staff. A puzzle plate rose from the floor inside Miles's space. A stack of sliding shapes and nested keys that required patience and soft hands. Miles approached at an unhurried pace. He ran his fingers over the grain, reading the tool with touch before he moved anything. Then he began, steady, unforced, like someone easing a knot without breaking the rope. Near the glass, guests made appreciative sounds. "Look at the split-thumb precision," murmured a scholar from the Drift Academies. "Notice the micro-corrections in his wrist path," added a fashion lord who liked being heard making observations. Miles kept his line simple. When a piece stuck, he paused, exhaled, and tried a new angle. Sometimes he let his eyes rest on the crowd the way a sailor reads a horizon. Calm, never hurried, always present. He was not performing a trick. He was being himself in a careful room, and somehow that was enough to quiet even the loudest admirers. In the far right, a small figure stood half behind a display pillar. Nori, dressed in a formal vest with a nervous pattern stitched along its edge, watched with round attention. The child waited, counting breaths, then slipped closer to the glass. Cavour's attention had shifted to a visiting financier. Real looked away to signal a server. In that thin slice of time, the child lifted a palm to the barrier. Miles paused. He set both hands on the puzzle so it would not slide, then stepped forward and raised his own palm to meet the small one. Glass between them, pulse against pulse, a mirror touch. It lasted only a moment. Nori's scales blushed to a soft green, a sign of pleased excitement. Then a gentle, firm voice called, "Little one, stay with me." Nori's parent appeared, graceful and kind but careful about rules. The child obeyed, walking backward at first, eyes still bright, then turning with an obedient bob. Across the ring, neighbors watched. The one with shifting colors, Prism, sent a faint ripple. A slow sweep from violet to teal like a steady hello. Tide, the gel entity, responded with a pulse of blue. The tall, resonant one, Kira, lifted thin arms and made an airy tremor you felt more than heard. Stoneback in the far chamber turned so that one bright eye faced Miles as if to say, "I see." Cavor returned to the glass. "Our guest is popular," he said with content amusement. "Show them the second sequence." Another device rose, 3 rings with moving glyphs. Miles twisted 2, pretended to misread the third so that a guest could guess the correction and feel useful. When someone spoke the right idea, he gave a small, grateful nod and did it. The room smiled. A good host knows how to make applause feel shared. As the evening reached its full glow, more faces came. A quiet pair from the council's research wing, chorus leader from a sky city, an engineer who worked on garden fields. Among them, a scientist with clear eyes and a plain coat, Professor Avel, stopped, listened, did not tap on the glass, and did not speak as if cataloging a thing. She watched in the way a person watches another person. Miles noticed. He did not nod. He simply went on being. Beneath the displays, tiny routines played out, too small to draw attention. Prism's coat shimmered in patterns that looked like idle beauty, but carried timing codes to Kira. Kira's faint tremors passed through structural supports that Tide could sense as waves. Stoneback's slow turn hid, then revealed. A reflection signaling where a drone hovered just out of sight. Miles's breaths came in a steady 4 count that he could vary to mark moments. And Nori, who loved patterns, would someday notice. When the last round of guests drifted towards sweets and polite gossip, Cavor closed the exhibition with an elegant toast. "To the wonders of our wide sky," he said, "and to the peace of keeping them safe." Glasses lifted. Soft laughter made the lantern light feel even warmer. Later, habitats returned to the collection circle. The drones hummed back to their charging ports. Rill walked the long ring with a checklist and a tired half-smile. The great hall dimmed until only path lights shone. Miles sat on the floor back to the glass, spine straight, eyes soft. From across the curve, Prism sent a small loop of color. Tide answered with a soothing wave. Kira gave a quiver like a plucked thread. Stoneback tapped a single careful claw twice upon his floor, the gentlest drum in all the worlds. None of this would be noticed by anyone who did not think to look for it. Miles closed his eyes, not to vanish, but to listen. Silence can be a door. On the other side of that door, simple, safe plans begin. A nod becomes a code. A hum becomes a map. A child's brave palm becomes a bridge. And in that patient, almost secret way, their night, finally started. Days, then weeks, folded like soft paper. Routine became a living tool. The drones kept steady routes. Nutrient ports opened on their familiar tick. Maintenance crews arrived on known cycles. Miles learned the rhythm and trusted it to carry the notes he and his neighbors needed. Prism, with the coat of shifting light, discovered that small ripples along their spine drew certain scanner lenses a fraction to the left. Tide, the gentle Geel, sensed particular frequencies moving through floor panels and could tell when a console connected to the central core. Kira, all strings and air, felt signals with a musician's care and found the estate's quiet resonances. Stoneback remembered every footfall and the exact weight of each guard. Other neighbors had gifts too. A double-eyed flyer named Solon watched from high perches. A quiet thinker called Loom traced numbers in dust with a tail that left no mark, once the air drifted. Miles brought something that did not fit neatly into devices. Steady attention and an instinct to be with, not against. Small, kind persistence. He began to build a shared language from nothing more than rhythm and shape. 2 taps and a pause meant later. A palm drawn in a simple curve meant safe. A breath held to 4. Then 3, then 4 again meant wait and watch. One evening, Nori returned to the collection ring alone, moving like a child who had learned how to be quiet without losing joy. The learning tab glowed in the small hand. The child sat cross-legged near the glass and opened a primer with tiny pictures and gentle words. Nori pressed the tab to the wall. It recognized the habitat screen and mirrored its surface, linking the two. The first page showed simple letters of galactic standard. Miles sat so he could see. Nori pointed to symbols and sounded them softly. The implant in Miles's head helped with listening, but reading was new ground. Nori's patience was like cool water. A symbol, a sound, a meaning, a smile. Soon, Miles could write his name in the simple set. The letters were not perfect, but they were his. Through the glass, Prism made a ribbon of pale green, a color they had started to use for together. Tide pulsed a small, blue ring that meant calm. Kira gave a thread thrum that was the shared sign for learn. It was a classroom, with walls and yet no real borders, with written shapes. The Coalition found a way to pass tiny messages at times that looked like normal maintenance notes. On cleaning days, a harmless phrase appeared on a service panel. Filter clear, but in the pattern of its letters lived timing. On rest days, a drone status light blinked a little song that meant the corridor was empty. A guard might see only a light. Friend would see a sentence. Still, they sought a path that did not break or wound. Miles did not want escape that harmed anyone. He wanted a door opened by the rules themselves. Salin had heard a rumor from visiting scholars about a council ethicist named Professor Avel, an observer who cared how collections were run. Loom remembered a ship emblem and matched it to an academy network. Kira knew frequencies used by research drones. Tide sensed the hour when a maintenance line went live. They built a message with patient care. Each being added a small true thing that only they could know. Prism sent a band of numbers hidden in a casual light show. Primes, then sums, then an elegant step. Tide gave a map of pressure cycles only someone watching from inside could provide. Kira wrote a short line of music that, when graphed, drew a clean proof of pattern. Stoneback added steady counts that matched door locks and charge intervals. Miles wrote 12 plain sentences about Earth. Sun on river water, the taste of salt wind, the way strangers still hold doors for each other when it rains. Nothing more complex than that. Nothing more needed. They did not try to shout. They chose to whisper in a way that could not be faked. Their plan needed a link. Nori could help with this without knowing the full risk. Miles taught the child a simple trick on the learner's tab. How to move a practice lesson into a maintenance cache so it would ride the next routine update. It was all within allowed use. No shield was broken. No lock picked. It was the calmest kind of subversion because it only asked a listener to listen. The night they sent the message, the ring was quiet as sleep. Tide felt the maintenance pulse wake. Kira hummed the right frequency. Prism gave a faint teal to say, now. Miles watched the panel code accept the lesson and tucked the small, beating hope back into his chest so he could breathe like nothing had changed. Then they waited. Waiting is its own work. Days went by. Life moved as a wheel. Miles solved small puzzles and sometimes made them look harder so that guests could guess. Prism preened. Stoneback dozed in sunny square shapes. Nori came with new letters and a laugh that made everything seem possible. One afternoon, a gentle wave of feeling moved through the ring, so soft it could have been the wind. Prism lifted to a bright line. Tide rippled in quiet joy. Kira's strings thinned to a tender hum. A notice had returned, not through the display where Kavor would see, but through a maintenance confirmation. A pattern acknowledged. A signature matched. A simple sentence, we hear you, only that, and yet it was the first true door. Miles sat cross-legged and let his shoulders soften. He shared the news with a breath pattern they all knew. Hands placed on hearts. Light pressed like a quiet morning. Stoneback tapped once, slow and full. In the space between those sounds, the coalition felt bigger than a room and stronger than a rule. They did not know what would come next. They only knew that they would meet it together, with patience, with care, and with that human thing that looks small until it is everywhere, the wish to keep one another safe. The seasonal gala came with silk canopies and dishes that smoked like dawn mist. It also came with a softer guard presence because important people prefer to feel unobserved. Lord Kavor wanted grace, not gates. He wanted the calm hum of admiration, not the clatter of visible rules. It was the day the coalition had circled on their unspoken calendar, not for escape in a rush, but for a careful step that would let help in. Morning to midday moved in warm tones. Servants fixed tiny lanterns along thread bridges. Florists coaxed floating gardens into even sweeter drifts. Nori walked beside a parent, practiced at looking formal, secretly scanning for friends. Inside the exhibition hall, selected habitats opened into shared spaces for demonstrations. Prism's colors would please the nobles. Kira's soft tremors would be called art. Tide's calm waves would be soothing. Miles's clever hands would be the talk of the evening. Stoneback would be the dignified marvel at the far end, patient as old mountains. Cavor approved the layout and told Reel to keep the neural enhancements subtle. Let them seem a touch sharper than baseline, he said. But please, not miraculous. The steward recorded settings with a careful eye. Guests flowed in, all grace and curious talk. As they clustered near the human's enclosure, Cavor triggered the first device. Miles worked at an easy pace, then a slightly brighter one when the implant nudged. He let his face show a thread of effort to keep it believable. He glanced across to Prism and caught the faintest stripe. A cue. Nori had reached a side console, the one used for lighting and climate tone. The child did not touch anything forbidden. Nori simply entered a minor code to open the educational overlay, then a second to route it through the maintenance channel, the same harmless trick used for lessons. The system accepted it because it was designed to be helpful. Kira's tremor rose half a shade and made certain sensors sing at a level they could not hear themselves. Tide swelled and settled, which made a set of lines warm and sleep for a breath too long. Prism threw a ribbon of radiance, pretty enough to draw eyes for 3 heartbeats. Stoneback angled a plate of shell to reflect a lantern into a camera eye, not to blind it, just to make it reset. The council shuttle touched down on an outer terrace. Professor Avil stepped out with a small team and a legal courier. They came under an academic inspection protocol that could track ethics inside a private collection, accompanied by observers with quiet authority. The notice had been filed at the last legal moment allowed, to keep time on their side and surprise on no one's face but the right one's. Inside, a gentle shiver moved through every implant in the ring. Not pain, not force, only a door opening, a channel that did not exist yesterday. Prism's light felt like comfort under skin that was never skin. Tide's presence felt like standing in a pool with friends. Kira's music sat in the bones like memory. Stoneback's slow mind revealed green places with wide skies. Miles felt them all at once and did not break. He breathed. He held the shape. He sent back the human thing that started this entire journey. Here I am with you. Cavor received the formal arrival notice and came to the exhibition hall with practiced welcome. Professor, he said with a gracious bow, you honor us. He meant to set the pace to keep the surface smooth. The habitats flickered. A safety sequence triggered by an emergency protocol buried under a layer of if statements and good intentions. It had always been there, but tonight someone finally spoke to it with the exact words it understood. Fields lowered. Doors did not swing wide, yet thresholds softened. Miles did not run. Prism did not burst into a storm of color. Tide did not flood. Kira did not shake the hall. Stoneback did not charge. Instead, they stepped, one by one, slow, visible, together. In the round center of the ring, they formed a loose circle. Hand to flash, to ripple, to read, to shell. Nothing loud. Everything clear. Professor Avel looked once at Cavor, then at the beings in the circle. Record, she said softly to her device. The legal courier began a calm recital of rights under council law, the kind used when persons are identified, where the law had not yet recognized them. Observers took positions not for battle, but for witnessing. Cavor tried a smile that had saved many evenings. A surprise, he said lightly. The system must be overgenerous with its safety program. How charming. Not a fault, Avel replied. A truth appearing. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Nori, standing with a parent, lifted both small hands and pressed them together in a sign of hope. Miles saw, and his chest eased. He reached out and set his fingers lightly on Prism's luminous limb. Prism's color ran warm. Tide touched them both with a gentle edge of cool. Kira laid a filament across like a ribbon at a joining. Stoneback set the tip of a great claw near the circle and held it as still as a promise. Those watching felt something pass through them that had no word yet in their languages. A clean recognition that care can link any distance. And that distance obeys new rules when care is present. The council team did not need loud proof. They needed steady human-scale evidence. They had it. The message logs, the timing maps, the gentle use of legal pathways, the way these beings chose the softest road toward change. Within days, hearings began. Not all voices were kind, but enough were brave. The assembly weighed pride against principle, and came down at last on the side of principle. The circle in the ring became the first note of a wider song. 6 months after the evening of the soft safety lights, the sky above the council port was the color of apricots. Ships came and went like calm birds. Miles stood at a window with Professor Ravel. Below, Prism prepared to travel home where night is full of color. Tide would soon ride a waterfold current to a gentle sea. Kira had already left on a wind-string vessel that hummed exactly right. Stoneback's world waited with a valley of warm stones. Your quiet way moved mountains, Avel said almost to herself. Miles smiled and touched the glass. Far away, he felt Prism's thankful light, Tide's cooling joy, Kira's tender note, Stoneback's grounded regard. He did not own this feeling. It belonged to all of them. It would belong to others. Across ports and planets, small circles would form, hands and limbs and light and sound. Nothing dramatic, everything new. The private collection that once impressed every guest had ended like a season. In its place, something better had begun. A simple agreement that every thinking life deserves its own morning. And in the quiet after that truth, the galaxy felt a little more like home. And that is where this new story rests. Not on a lock broken, but on a door understood. Not on a single hero, but on many patient friends. Not on a trophy, but on a bridge. If you stayed to the end, share what part touched your heart. Your words help us keep telling gentle, brave tales like this one.